This episode of the Game Dev Show is sponsored by Demos, makers of Chat Avatar and the upcoming Rodin. They're building AI for 3D model generation and already have working faces generated from image or text that you can control and animate in-game. They have examples showing all kinds of faces from real people to stylized characters, but I wanted to import my own into Unity and play around, and I was really impressed with how easy it was and just how adjustable the face is. As sponsors of the show, they've offered to give away 10 free credits to the first 99 listeners who use the code in the description, and I'll put a link down there as well. You can try it out, generate yourself or your favorite person, and import them directly into Unity or whatever tool you want. They support Blender, Unity, Unreal, and all of the tools that you would normally expect. Now, Chat Avatar is really cool, but they're also working on something that may be even more exciting, which is generating 3D models from images and text. That's coming out soon, so check out Chat Avatar while you're waiting, go import your head, and keep an eye on their upcoming AI game tech. All right, welcome to the Game Dev Show. I'm here today with Pal, Greg, Andrew, and Jason Story. I want to say a special thanks to the sponsor of this episode. Check out the link in the description. Go try out that AI face generation and the new model generation stuff. It's really cool. The face generation I played with quite a bit and had a lot of fun with, and pull it right into Unity, and it just worked. And then the model generation looks kind of like the future, and it's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, is the kind of the future of asset creation, because I didn't think it was going to be coming quite this fast, where people would be turning pictures and things into videos like we saw with Sora, and now models like we've seen here, and I assume we'll probably see more of at GDC. So this is kind of exciting for me, but I'm curious. First off, welcome. How you guys all doing today before we go into it?
Doing great.
Doing wonderfully great.
Yeah.
Doing great.
Good. Story, I assume you're doing great too?
I'll go a solid 6.5 out of 10. You know, I don't attempt to go too high.
Honesty up in here. I like it. Well, if we're doing that, I woke up with headaches.
Yeah, so on today's episode, we're going to be going through AI stuff, some of the AI news and tech that's been coming out recently with games specifically. I want to talk about GDC. It's coming up in, what is it, just 2 weeks? Is it 2 weeks exactly, or 3 weeks? It's 2 weeks, right?
It's just
it's literally it's like a week, and it's on the 18th. So it's coming up very soon. And the week of GDC, we're going to have a special episode of the Game Dev Show from GDC with some special guests and lots of awesome stuff. So make sure that you're ready for that. And we'll probably reveal more about that next week or next Friday on the episode there. And then after we get through the GDC and AI stuff, we're going to get into some resume reviews for game developers. There's been a ton of layoffs lately. We were just watching the extra credits video about the game industry and the layoffs, and one of the big causes behind that. I'll make sure to link that in the chat and stuff. But we're going to take a look at some people's resumes that are out there, maybe either looking for jobs or considering or just wanting feedback on the resumes, so that everybody can get an idea of what stuff's good, what stuff's bad, or at least our opinions on it. And we'll tear some apart, or we'll praise some other ones and tell you what we think and what we would change, at least to help you get a job out in the game dev industry. So again, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and all that stuff, and subscribe. And I guess we can get going. So have you all seen that AI face generation stuff before, just a few minutes ago?
I had not.
Nope, this one not.
I assume no Story. Yeah, it looks pretty new. So they were just demoing it at SIGGRAPH. You can see as part of the little clip there was them showing like they're talking and the face moves and animates. And I thought this would be really interesting for you, Andrew, just because you always put blend shapes into your characters and facial animations and all that rigging, and they do exactly that. And there's a question: do I get paid per code or activation? No, it's just go use the link and try it out. Don't do it if you're not going to use it. Just go try it out. But I think you should try it out, because you just pull in a face for free and grab your own character. You can do stylized characters as well, but you take your own person in there. But yeah, I thought you would be interested in this just because you're big on blend shapes, and it comes like instantly with all these blend shapes and a little editor for it. And I thought that was awesome. I also think Lee, if Lee's watching, would be very into it as well. He's big on character facial animations and does some awesome stuff.
Did you say these folks will be at GDC as well?
Yes, they're presenting at GDC. I think their CTO or CEO or CTO, I forgot which one, is presenting there. Show off the tech.
I swear that the thing about the AI with avatars, whether 2D or 3D, is it's moving fast. You can see it like it's not moving fast now, but you can see how it's getting faster and faster, and it's going to one day click and be like the thing. And I so look forward to, even for 2D avatars, just being able to throw in a thing and have an on-device model that is able to make them go like this and talk. And I've seen 2D avatars talk, and it's super believable. They move their head. That's compelling. They have facial expressions and everything. It's not yet real time, right? But it's only a matter of time before it is real time, and probably not that long. And at that point, you could just create 2D face, and then that 2D face can be as lively as any other 2D face, and it just seems so compelling and so exciting and so scary.
Yes. No, I agree. I think it's for 2D and 3D. It really, for me, it's just like, it seems like it's empowering designers eventually. It's getting to the point where designers will be able to just say, like, I want this character, and then not have to wait, months for an art pipeline. I think that's got some serious negative effects for art developers and artists long term, but I still think that's quite a ways out before the impact is huge. I think we're still looking at like a decade out before, but then again, I'm wrong on all my predictions, so who the hell knows.
For the 2D aspect, things are just moving so fast. I wouldn't be surprised if the impacts are much less than a decade. But I relate it, in my mind, I think it's similar to physics. In Unity, you don't think about physics, you just do it. There was a time, I don't know how many years ago, but there was a time where probably people were like, I need physics. Shoot, how am I going to do physics? And that you just do. All the physics people, I guess, are out jobs.
Yeah, and there didn't used to be that many, and it used to be a well-coveted position at game companies where somebody would be hired to come in who really understood it and could handle and deal with physics stuff. And then eventually people realized that could turn into middleware, and all of the middleware stuff popped up for it. And same happens with a lot of these things. So yeah, maybe it will happen with the art pipeline as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. What does everybody in chat think? I'm curious. They probably all think it's terrible because the artists. I mean, I feel like a lot of these things are going to be bad for artists, but eventually it's going to come for programmers too. Yeah. I just think we have time.
I'm not sure. I'm thinking that both sides have the same problems right now. Yeah, because right now using AI, even generative AI for textures, 3D assets, or even for voice is on the same part as I would say Copilot in programming. Yeah, you still need someone experienced to make something great from it. So it doesn't change a lot. Yeah, because for example, we used 11 Labs for voice generation, for mostly to use for videos and stuff like that, so we don't have to talk again. And if you don't give it high quality, nice voice recorded professionally, you will get what you input. Yeah. So if you give it badly created voice with reverb, with echo, you will get the same thing. Yeah. And the same with texture generation. Texture generation right now is for images and stock photos. It's, I would say, okay. Yeah, but if you want something more professional, then you have to have something better.
Story, you got thoughts on this?
Strangely enough, not really. I think I'm very much agree with Paul on this. There's not. I'll wait and say. It's one of those things. It's artistry like anything else. It's not. You can't get as much out of it unless you put stuff in. I've had my own experiences trying to do things with it. because you can record your own voice as well, right? Like it's not just for cloning other people. So I've done like multiple sessions of my own voice to see how it works, and I've tried doing like hyper expressive versions of takes. I've tried to do really deadpan, and I found that if you speak, if you're very articulate and you speak very plainly and clear, it actually sucks. What you get out of it is very dry and unemotive, and so you actually have to give it a portrayal when you're doing it. And so again, long story short, it comes down to if you catch people's random dialogue and snippets of speeches and scripts, you're going to get something which is going to be off, even if it's like the perfect recording and the perfect tone matching. That's not how people speak. You need to find someone giving an address or a speech to replicate an address or a speech. So I understand the fear from those perspectives, but on balance, it's not like a lot of people don't have a good corpus of recordings of themselves in the kind of intonations you'd need to create the kinds of things you'd want. So I just don't think we have an ear for it yet. I think as time goes by, like people talk about robocalls and stuff now. Well, the truth is, if you get a phone call from a family member saying, "Help, I am in trouble, my life is in danger," I'm like, we don't have an ear for it now, but over time we're going to be like, that's not, there's no, the intonation is incorrect there. Once we have an understanding of this stuff, I have like, again, it can be done, it will eventually be done, and people will clone stuff, but as it stands right now, I don't think we have either the tech nor people the talent to do it in most cases. Again, it's soonish, but not yet.
I don't know. My mom's friend, they're old, but my mom's friend got a call from her husband basically saying he was on a trip, and he needed money wired because for some reason, and she almost did it. Turns out it wasn't him. Now, whether this was a software that made it sound like him, whether it was someone who was just really good at copying voices, but somehow whoever it was knew he was on a trip, knew all the details about who he was, who his wife was, and I think.
But you highlighted the most important part there, though. This goes back to phone phreaking in the early days, back to social engineering. The skill was never the actual tech side of it. Sure. It was always the people side of it. And so you could have the best recording voice in the world, but if you don't even know the names of the people you're supposedly communicating with, if you don't know the way they communicate with each other, you can catch people off guard. So like the danger is always going to be how much information you put out there, right? Like the classic, like a lot of people, the most classic hack in Silicon Valley for getting into corporations was just to drop USB sticks around campuses. They would literally go to the places where the Google offices and things where people would hang out, and they would just drop USB sticks, and they'd be empty, and you plug them in and nothing would happen, but that's it, you've done the job. So like that's the social engineering. Like all of the other stuff, you're going to catch old people, but like you could do the same thing by knocking on their door and saying you're here to see the meter, right? Like that's not the same. This isn't a tech problem. This is a social engineering.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with that. I think these things are, most of us will hopefully never encounter a scam like that. But at the same time, I do wonder if we're ever going to be able to use our phones again after all this.
I feel like those scammers text me at least once a week, asking me if I'm somebody else because they're some girl who lives in a city near me. Like, oh, they got the wrong number again.
I get constant scam calls. I need to change my phone number. That's how bad it is. It's like 20, 30 a day. And they use AI voices. I hear they leave voicemails. Sometimes they don't just hang up. They leave voicemails and they're like, "Hello, Andrew. Andrew, are you there? I can't hear you. Andrew, are you there?" And I'm like, it's an AI voice. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's less obvious, but I'm just like, once you're on the list, you're on the list, I guess.
That's I'm screwed too. I get them once a week. I get some kind of call from something from a foreign number, and there's no way I can. Again, I have to change my number, but it's such a cool phone number. I've had it since I was like 16. I'm not likely to change it unless I really have to. And so the fact that I don't get calls very often means I'm kind of fine for now. But it is getting to the point. I'm very tempted to just get a brand new number.
Is your number the Irish version of 8675209?
Let's just say my number has that lyrical thing where you'd have an ad on TV and you'd be able to sing along to it. It's got a really cool vibe. So whenever I give it to people, it's usually easy to remember.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law got one of those scam calls claiming to be one of her grandkids and saying he'd been arrested and he needed her to post bail for him. Yeah. She didn't fall for it, fortunately.
Yeah. It's a thing. Years ago, in a friend from high school went to Paris for a summer, and she emailed me that summer, and we were like 19, 20, saying she needed $3,000, that she got mugged and she needed money. And I was like, man, shit, I didn't have any money to send though. I literally had no money, so it was not something I could do. But to this day, I didn't talk to her after this, and we fell out. It was my fault, but either way, I always wondered.
So she got mugged and you just abandoned her.
Well, it was more complicated than that, I'm sure. But it's been also like 20 something years, so there's that memory. But either way, I never found out, and I never asked her if that was real. But I have a feeling it was not real. Like, this must have been an email scam. Like, somebody in Paris maybe got her email access and decided just to email her friends or something. This was before MySpace, so it's just straight email, right? So I have no idea. But
yeah, it reminds me of when that Arab Spring thing broke.
Let's go. By the way, like, there's so many YouTube channels if you're interested in this stuff, where you can find the entire scripts from all of these different things. I like to check them out once every few weeks, just so that I know what the current running scams are, just on the off chance I see them crop up. So I highly recommend, like, just every so often doing a search for what the present scams are, because they're wrote down to like the same line by line. So once you understand what they are, you can catch them very, very quickly.
Yeah, they send out regular emails at work about current scams to look out for.
Yeah, Sony used to do that all the time. But you reminded me of when there was that big rebellion in Egypt.
Yeah.
And over with Twitter and all this stuff happening. And I got a text message from a friend I hadn't talked to in like a decade, saying that he was stuck in Egypt and needed help getting a flight out of there. And I was positive it was a scam for at least like the first hour, until I started actually got him on the phone. I was like, oh shit, you're really stuck in Egypt. Like the first time, I mean, I always like instantly assume everything's a scam. And that was the one time that something wasn't.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds like a great scam to run, actually, because it's taking advantage of a thing. People are paying attention. Of course, in the future, though, now you're going to call him, and it's not going to be him. It's going to be an AI voice.
Well, now he lives down in San Diego. He stopped travel. He I don't know. He spent like a decade just traveling around the world solo by himself. All kinds of crazy stuff. Lots of cool stories. So
that's cool.
Way more adventurous than me.
Keep in mind, there's like broadly 2 or 3 categories of these kinds of scams. The first one is basically looking for stupid people. And that's why I've mentioned this before. But if you get scam emails and they're poorly spelt and you're laughing at them, that they sound really bad, that's on purpose. If you're the kind of person who overlooks all of that stuff, then you're the perfect mark. They don't want somebody who's going to be like, oh, look, that's misspelt, therefore it's probably a scam. They're suspicious. They're going to waste your time if you're trying to scam a lot of people effectively. The other side of it is the ones where you're trying to get the next level, which you're trying to get suspicious old people, because old people oftentimes are actually quite suspicious. They're like, they don't trust computers at all, never mind people trying to get them to buy stuff or do things. So the way those ones work tend to be more, you orchestrate a situation where it feels like they're benefiting, and then you flip the script so they feel like they owe you something, and then you get them on that. So the good example being the classic scams where you reach out to somebody and say that they get a refund. Our company is closing down, and so you bought from us before, and we're giving you back your money. And they're like, oh, did I? Yeah. We'll just follow through the steps. We'll go through the thing, and then they have to type something in, and then you purposely make them screw up. So you add a number or something on a refund amount. And so basically they owe you money now. And so now they have to go to their bank account and return back the difference of whatever they accidentally gave you. And so now that's, so they feel like they're indebted to you in doing that. So there's multiple tiers depending on who you're going for. And then the other part of it too is we'll talk about the corporate scams. The fact of the matter is your data isn't really that important. It's good for lists because people buy up that data to sell on lists, but your actual information on your computer is very rarely important to people. It's the more social engineering of getting somebody who works at a large company. So there's tons of scrapers and worms that'll go through the internet to find people who work in big companies and basically get onto their machine so that they can follow them to their work machine, so we can then get to the real stuff, and then they can deal with actual corporate espionage. So yeah, it is worth noting each of these are massively different strategies and tactics.
John Oliver had a recent show on his on the something pig, stuffing pigs, or fat pig, or basically the scams, and went through all this. And he talked about the corporate ones and how one bank here in the US, the bank went under because the CEO or CFO invested the bank's money in crypto in a crypto scam. But if you like John Oliver, it's a good episode. I think my biggest takeaway, the people who do the scammers that you scammed are often themselves victims of labor and essentially are stuck as slaves inside Myanmar or something right across the border. And so a shitty world all around when it comes to scams. But yeah, good episode as always for John Oliver.
I'll have to watch that. I haven't seen it. It's a new one. Man. A way to make it sad, Andrew.
I bring it up. Who brought it up? Did I bring it up?
I don't know. We got more sad stuff to get into in just a few though. So I updated the poll. The first poll was done, and it looked like most people. What was the result? It was 46 or 51-48 on the no for banning, but everybody or most people seem to think that it should require consent. 85%.
That makes sense.
Which is understandable. I could see that. I don't know how that would work exactly though, because how do you say that like, that's that person's voice and not my cousin that just happens to sound like that person's voice? Like, how do you?
But that's different, isn't it? It's about
maybe, but maybe not. I mean, just because like you're famous and your voice sounds like somebody else's voice, does that mean that their voice is no longer like usable? I don't know how that works. Like, I don't know how you.
There's already
then how do you figure out like what's close enough? Like, where's the percentage boundary, and how does that all work?
Well, it's a fraud question, right? This already exists. There's already people you can hire that are voice actors who will repeat like Morgan Freeman voices for your videos and things, which basically there's the difference between dialects and idiolects. Idiolects are a person's particular unique way of speaking, and that's the Morgan Freeman voice or the whatever, the Michael Caine's. And those ones, but again, that's not a question of the voice per se. That's a question of the legality of, are you doing it with fraud intent to imply this person worked with you versus you're right. You can't copyright a voice, but you can effectively say, I'm alluding to the fact that it's this famous person, right? That's where the problem is.
Yeah. I think generating a random face that just happens to look like this gorgeous face right here with that. But if you do it on purpose, that's a different thing. It's comes down to the intent behind it. And I'm certain we shouldn't ban people saying Morgan Freeman. That would be bad for the world. But
Yeah, no, that's a tough one now. After you brought up Morgan Freeman in chat, I suddenly was like, wait a minute now. Yeah. Anyway, was there something else with AI I was thinking about, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, I was curious. Do you guys have any predictions for AI stuff that's going to get announced or released at GDC? I'm guessing, just off the top of my head, I expect that we're going to see probably a bunch of random big announcements around AI stuff, around AI characters in games, probably some games with AI characters in them. And I would be surprised if we don't see more things around like AI image generation and maybe even level building, level generation, or visual fidelity increases, improvements from AI stuff. So I'm kind of expecting to see a big range of that, and probably like at least a third of the giant booths being AI related stuff. But do you guys have any specific predictions or things that you're thinking might maybe get announced, talked about, or be big there, or either there or like in this next month? Anybody?
No predictions.
Nothing? Nobody?
I mean,
okay.
Well, anything and everything with Dom. Where's the real solutions to the hardest problems that we all face?
Yeah. Retopo and UV mapping. That would be amazing. What I would love is if I could just give it a character that is bad and have it just magically fix the character. Just fix all the textures and the materials, make it look the same, but have one texture and be clean, and not 5 4K textures for a basic character. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Be able to clean all those up. All right. Well, you guys got anything else before we jump into GDC and resume review stuff? No? All right.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, first, real quickly, let's just make sure that we share the new things that are out. And Pal still got the new castle set out, and that is not the link that I wanted to share. There's this one right here. The modular castle and dungeon pack is still 50% off on the asset store. Oh, look, the links are actually working. So you can go grab that. It's 50% off for the next, how many days? Like 3 or 4 days left?
Yeah, no, till Wednesday.
Okay, and until Wednesday. Yeah, it's modular set that's all nature manufacturer stuff, but with an actual dungeon, and you can build and put stuff together. I've grabbed it and I want to play around with it some more. I really want to do a video on it, but I need to spend some time with it to do it justice and really dig in there. It's a pretty cool looking pack. There's also what else was there that I was going to share? There was one other thing. Oh, Andrew's doing a video about projectiles. Let's see if that link shows up. Yep, Andrew just did a video about the new projectile thing. You want to tell everybody what that is, Andrew?
I've been working on this amazing projectile package. I'm calling it Power, which funky, but I keep using it.
Projectile Power, is that going to be the asset name, or is it part of one of the existing assets?
So first, usually my internet's been. I'm getting new internet this afternoon. I'm usually not this blurry in real life, so just a heads up. But I'm getting brand new service this afternoon.
That would be great if you just came to GDC with your face painted up to look all blurry, though. get a blurry mask.
Story needs to offline tell me what the package should actually be named. But the whole point of it is to allow projectiles to be modular and customizable and easy to use. So you just throw on the spawner, put on some behaviors, and now you can turn this, a fireball can be a fireball, or it can be a homing fireball. It can shoot 3 instead of 1. It can, just by changing out little tiny behavior scripts. And so part of this is saying, okay, well, let's integrate popular asset store. And so I've been working on, and it's also helping me dog food it, but I've been working the sci-fi effects from Forge 3D. Forge 3D. I've been converting.
Yeah, I noticed that, honestly, that was my favorite part of your video. The absolute unapologetic shade at their audio system. I legit laughed out loud when you you didn't even say it. You just basically said, "Here's their audio system," and then you moved on, and I was just like, "That's fantastic." That made me laugh so hard. Yeah.
Yeah. The scripting lacks in that package, and it took me, it took hours to convert it. But hey, now if you do get my package and theirs, when my package comes out, you're gonna have really great sound and particles. Their pack's great. The effects are amazing, but it's just really hard to use. To the point where you can't use it. You have to use on the package, even say it. If you look at the reviews, you have to coding if you actually want to use this in practice. But my goal is to make it so that you don't have to. If you buy both, you'd basically be able to use theirs out of the box with my system, and my system should make basically projecting projectiles just a lot more simple and straightforward for and customizable, really, because you can write your own. If you want a special movement script, write your own little one method movement script and then throw it on and it'll work, So, yeah.
Oh, nice. That sounds really cool. We lost Greg for just a second. Yeah, we have to talk more about that and do like a full demo as soon as it's ready too. It seems really cool. It's a problem everybody I feel like constantly runs into wanting to do projectiles, and you end up coding it over and over, or you get stuck on it and don't know what the hell to do. And
absolutely, it's not an easy thing, and this is what I learned as building this. I'm like, oh shit, there's a lot of considerations, and as I'm doing it, I love the process of using these other particle packs because it forces me to be like, oh, I'm doing this wrong, or there's a better way to do it, and I keep updating my own stuff. So in the end, the tool will be so much more functional and better because I'm realizing things I did wrong, things I should do better. Even just yesterday, last night, I realized I used to have specific movement behavior, collision behavior, this behavior. And then I was like, okay, wait a minute. This can just be a list of behaviors. Throw on the behaviors you want, and that's it, So,
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
So I changed it.
Oh, so yeah, I think it's super important to be dog food in your stuff. It's like the number one thing that people fail at, and their product starts to suffer because they don't realize the issues. They just hear little bits here and there, the most vocal voices instead of seeing the most common problems. So
the only addition I would look at is given the kind of design you're going for, anytime I see a system which is basically a kind of base extending functions. So if you have your behavior sets where you're like stacking different behaviors to do different things, because you know the types, you could easily add a custom editor dropdown onto your script that basically says available ones you've not yet implemented. And then when you click one, it would just add component of that type on. So you don't have to go and find the thing and add it or guess what's available or try to do a hunting for it. If you already know that you're basically, this slot requires on collision responders or whatever you want to call it, then you can basically say for each of that type, show the available options. So I'll always do that if it's like file-based stuff. I do that for like populating lists of data. If there's a text file with a prefix or something, I'll just go any text file with this prefix. I could do a drop down, I could do a search filter, but I'll just like give you buttons. Like I know that's what this is for, so I can give you a drop down to show you the available ones. And given that yours is composited that way, you can simplify it. You can also use the add component attribute thing to like customize your pathing, but I find people still search through that. In most cases, it's a like as I guess you've established using these yourself, whenever you use someone else's tool set, you have no concept of what's actually available to you. And so you want to play. You want to kind of go, what toys are in this toy box, right? And if you have to go hunt through the script sections, you're like, well, which ones go where? How do I use them? But if you're looking at a thing and it's like, this is a bullet and a bullet hits something and there's a drop down that says available actions on whatever. Like I didn't like the way Cinemachine did their version, but I have to admit it was very clean that I could do a drop down and go, this is what's available. You can do impulses, you can do camera shakes, and it's like, oh, that's very clear to me what the intent is. So there's pros and cons, but I do think the kind of thing you're doing with the amount of moving pieces, I would do something like that just so people would have a very clear understanding that these are the ways things can hit, these are the way things could be responded to. And if you make your own, it'll automatically show up in this list because it'll reflect from the same base type or whatever.
Yeah. I need the custom editor will definitely come on this one. And I'm going to have to do a pass to clarify the scripts themselves so that they're more clear what each one does. Some of them are very clear. Ray cast forward. Hopefully that's pretty clear. But other ones are verbose and not so clear. So.
Yeah, Andrew, I just wanted to pop this up too, because kind of going along with what Story said, where you have the buttons. This is another way that I've done it, where it's somewhat similar, where it gives you pop-ups of the different types. So if they're implementing their own new types, they just show up here in the editor automatically as a new type. So you don't really have to do anything. You can have custom editors and have it kind of automatically grab them all, and then it gives them a drop down where they pick the subclass that they want to use, and then they can add them in as a set of lists or behaviors or whatever else you want to do like that. So I dropped the link in chat. I'll drop it in our other chat too if you want to grab it. But it's a simple plugin. You grab it and you add the one attribute, and then it just kind of works. And you can look at the code for it. It's pretty straightforward.
I'll check it out.
I would say actually, you're right. That's actually how, truthfully, that's how I would do it. But the reason I don't recommend that, or I wasn't recommending that in this case, was because the way I would do that is I would make a custom attribute for the class, so people could decorate the class with the path structure for the, where it goes into that tree. Because the way you build that, by the way, that drop down is it's string based with slashes for each folder structure. And so once you get to that stage, you're now building like a tooling system around it, like a command pattern thing. And it's like I didn't want to recommend that path, but you're right. That's better because it gives you a search box and it gives you, it's much nicer, but there's more tooling.
It may not be better for an asset though, too, because it may be just a little bit of too much complication. If you're adding in an editor tooling setup for an asset that you could probably do a simpler one that just does buttons to just add it, because then everybody will understand if it's going through the asset. If you add something like this, you probably have to be at least intermediate to advanced level to to really be able to understand what the code's doing versus if you just did buttons where it loops through each one that you don't have and have a button to add them. Everybody's going to be able to read and understand that it doesn't use reflection and cause them an editor error build or something or build error.
One of the things I want to add is icons for the different types. So a movement behavior will have like boots or something, you know, so that when you do see the list, you can get a quick sense of, oh, what behaviors do I have on this object? Then you can look at the specific types and you can then, you know, reorder the order of operations. So which one gets called first and all that stuff. I think that would be a more pleasing way of doing it. That's just me. Just to make it more visual and pretty.
Yeah, I agree. All right, before we go on to resumes, a couple other things I wanted to share now that links are working. If you didn't already check out the chat avatar thing, you can go back to the beginning, go watch the video and grab the free credits. It's the first 99 users. I assume they'll be gone pretty quick. So you just go grab the credit, go try it out. You generate a face, pull it right into Unity and start animating it or talking through it, and the blend shapes all work. And with the free credits, you can do it totally free. And then I wanted to mention, multiplayer mastery course. Next call is Monday morning. Tomorrow, I'm hoping to get AI finished up along with the MOBA source code. So I'm going to put up the code for the project that I'm going to work on a little bit after this stream later on today, where it's basically turned the coursework into like a League of Legends style game, but with some different stuff. I made it so you pick 2 different roles, and then you control the different pets going out of the spawners and stuff. It's a work in progress, but I'm trying to get it done before GDC. I want to have like a full playable game wrapped up before GDC. And then the Flash deals are still live, and if you only get one of them, get that damn editor extension one because it's super cheap, or get Pals and Andrews too, of course. But I've already talked about theirs like a billion times, so you guys already know to grab them and probably already have most of them. If you don't, though, go grab the lava environment. Go grab the Andrew. You have it's the low poly monster pack in there again, right?
Yeah, that and game modules, but they're coming up a little bit. They're like next week.
Yeah, and the lava started 2 hours. How many? 2 hours ago. So you have 20 hours to get it.
20 hours, yeah. So go grab lava, go grab those. The low poly characters.
This time,
of my time, except for that one little thing that. But then those editor tools. Since I'm doing something that's not in a YouTube video, the V tabs and V hierarchy ones, I've been using them nonstop, and I haven't tried out all of the other ones in depth because I want to get familiar with them going one at a time. But I gotta say, like, I love them. They feel like a lot of the things that I love about Odin, I love about this one. Is just straightforward, simple to use, very lightweight, and it's made like my hierarchy view so much nicer, and my little tabs, like I use them more and more and more. And I was thinking about this story. We were talking about this. Was that yesterday? The tabs. One of the other things that I do with it often, and I'm curious what you do for this, is I have one for my scenes. So I have a folder of my scenes, and in that tab, whenever I want to go to a scene, I just click over to that tab and I just double click on the scene that I want now. I mean, obviously I've only got less than a dozen scenes, so it's not an unmanageable amount. But what do you do for scene management stuff? For scene loading, do you have a different plugin or thing that you use, or?
I wrote a little overlay script that has the a dockable overlay with the name of the current scene, and then with a drop down, it gives you a list of options. And the reason I do that is I find, like folder structure, I do roughly the same thing every time. So I use the word examples and experiments. And so examples are whenever there's something that I'm doing that is demonstrating a single feature of something, and then experiments are when I'm like importing something new and playing with it. And so just by the nature of it being in that folder or being in that substructure, it'll automatically hierarchy break it for me. So I know what's the real scenes versus the not real scenes. And if I wrote it once, it's hard coded, but I don't care that it's hard coded, because it just means that the 4 or 5 naming conventions I use is now a really nice drop down that's always there the way I happen to use it,
Oh, okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Nice setup system. All right. Were there any other things I needed to share real quick? I think that was it. I think we could probably jump over to the resumes now. So there was a question in chat about how to submit them. If you want to submit them, I think we'll probably do more resume reviews next week as well, just email it to me at jason@game.courses, and I will add them into the folder and we'll look at them. But make sure that if you can, please just anonymize it, remove any personal stuff. Don't put like your address or your phone number. If you don't mind your email being up there, fine, leave it on. But I don't want to try to, I'm going to screen share it. So I don't want anything to be on there that you don't want on there. So make sure that you just clear out anything that you don't want anybody seeing. So you guys ready to start, or anything else before we jump into resumes? All right, let me grab this tab out and we'll share it, and we'll start. We'll just go down the list right at the top of the folder. Yeah, the two guys in Europe have the best internet. I don't know what, I think the problem that I'm running into is something with my wireless setup, although I'm literally plugged into the wireless extender right there. Let's see if we can make this big and full. I think I have to turn off chat.
Probably the only benefit about being in Ireland, cows don't use the internet, so there's not that much congestion on the line.
You got to get smarter cows, damn it.
Yeah,
All right.
use the internet.
Cool. So here's our first resume from name with email at LinkedIn. They've got a link to their itch portfolio, and this is their experienced game developer with a 4+ year background specializing in C# to craft immersive gameplay and engaging experiences. Proficient in creating captivating gameplay and modular systems, coupled with an understanding of AI and programming. Passionate about collaborating with others to deliver high quality games and learn along the way. So that's the intro. Should you guys want to start there, or should we just continue on all the way through before we critique?
Well, I think whatever critique we do, we should definitely do it in steps, because it's very easy to get lost if you're jumping to other stuff. But I guess the question is, where are we on a scale of like how much detail are we going into with this stuff? I guess is the question. Is it broad notes? Is it like, are we going through like phrasing? How much detail?
Well, first, how do you guys all like this as an intro? Because I mean, sometimes there's an objective section there, or there's like a little bit. This is more of like an about me. That's kind of third. I don't know which person this is, right? Like it's in between. I don't know. I'm curious how you guys feel about this though. Like for me, it's a little bit long, and I get a little bit lost reading through it, and by the end of it, I don't really remember everything that I've read in that paragraph, except for the 4+ years, because it's the only number and a symbol.
It's a cover letter. I think, would it not be better to put this information in a cover letter specific to the job you're applying for and keep the resume to the nuts and bolts of the resume?
I do like a little intro section at the beginning, and I agree it's a little bit long. I do think that you should always tailor it to the specific job you're applying for. So whatever you're highlighting in there, it should be some key points that they're looking for in the job description. But yeah, probably pare it down to just 1 or 2 sentences and make sure that it's actually targeting the job description you're applying for.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd say personally, I don't like doing these kinds of introductory sections, or if I do, it's like a one-liner. The reason why is here's the brass tacks thing. When you read a resume, it reads one of 2 ways. It either reads like, help, I want a job, or I might consider working for you. And ideally, the more experience you have, the more you tailor your resume to go, here's what I've done. If it fits what you need, let me know. But when the more junior you are, the more you kind of go, please hire me. And your resume is like, I'm fantastic. Here's all the reasons why. And immediate off the bat, that tells me, which is funny because I'd look at something like experienced and 4 years, then those two words give you that sort of conflicting thing of like, this reads like a junior resume to me. Now, I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying specifically that introductory section to me reads like I would read it and go, this is somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience, who doesn't have people calling for them for work. As I know it's a very subtle phrasing, but I mean is like, this is it's too much requesting work rather than saying, here's what I do. Broadly, you want your resume to say, I've done these things. These are my skills. This is what I have. You want to avoid language that puts you in that sort of position of somebody who's basically begging for work. And so I would cut down a lot of that stuff. I would avoid, even again, things like words like experience plus 4 years is like you're deciding that 4 years means experience, which tells me even more that to you is called experienced and therefore leads to junior. So a lot of the language here is very important. So I would avoid even using phrasing like that. I would say, I have these many years of experience. I've worked on these projects. This is what I do. Like, you don't get to judge for the other person whether that's considered enough experience for what they're looking for, you know?
Yeah, I would put that you're a game programmer with C# and Unity experience, if that's what you're using, or assuming that it says C#, so I assume it's Unity, or whatever engine it is if you're doing something else. But I'd put those in there. Mention that immersive gameplay and engaging experiences is super generic, as is most of the rest of it. I would probably rewrite that down to, like Story was saying, 1 or 2 sentences for just say that you're a developer who's worked on live games built in Unity, and then highlight kind of the best things that you've done, or the best things that you can bring to that, like Greg was mentioning, to the job specifically that you're applying for. So if they're doing something with live stuff, make sure that that's called out. If they're doing something where you're going to have to do, level design stuff or level implementation, then make sure you call that out. But I would call out, the important things, cut it down, get rid of a lot of the fluff stuff in the beginning, the passionate about collaborating with others and delivering high quality games, and learn. Like, if you're not, then you're auto disqualified anyway. So it's like kind of a little too generic for me. Andrew, you got anything else on this one, or Pal?
No, for me the same. Yeah, especially that most of these sentences is just summary of the skills, and I can just look at skills and know faster what he was writing than what's up there. Yeah. So I would agree 1 sentence would be enough, just a basic summary for that. I have so many years of experience, and that's enough for me. Yeah.
That was a good feedback. I hadn't thought about the difference between the junior and non-junior very much. I definitely know that from seeing resumes. I've seen that personally, but I didn't actually cross my mind with that. And now I'm thinking, what does my resume look like? It's been a while since I've updated it, but I should probably go back and think about that. But there's a good call out there. But I have to go. I've got an impromptu meeting over on this computer, so I have to go. So
have a good time. We'll see you later. Thanks, Andrew.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So real quick, there are a couple questions in chat. One was about how to get your resume reviewed. Just email it to me, jason@game.courses. We'll probably do it on the next one. And the second was about what it takes to not be a junior engineer or junior programmer or senior. How many years? I mean, if we're just going to give it a year number, which obviously isn't always going to be accurate, what's the year number or minimum you would say?
I always telling that I wouldn't say never. I would say how many years. I can give you a quick example. Yeah, I was working for space industry. Yeah, I was the project leader, and I had to hire additional developer for Unity because we were using Unity. I had multiple guys. It went up to 2 guys between. One person, 10 years, I would tell you, 10 years of experience on the CV, yeah, 10 years of experience, 6 years in Unity, done 4 projects, yeah. Second guy, drop out of high school, done Unity for 1 year, himself, done 2 projects during this time, only his own projects, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's what mostly that's from CVs. The 1 year guy, I would say, was no, he was regular. He wasn't the junior. He was a regular. After 1 year of self-teaching himself, the demo projects were amazing. The physics, graphics, and everything he learned in just 1 year himself was just amazing. He was a genius guy that I could take, and in a half year have someone that's on a regular level that I can give any task to him, and he will do it. Yeah. And the 10 years guys of experience, he was a junior for me, and I would say quite beginner junior, yeah, because during this 10 years of experience, he wrote very bad code. The projects he did were badly done, and he said he done most of things in them. So during this 10 years of experience, he mostly didn't learn anything more than he took out from his studies. That's why I'm never telling how many years you have, because I've seen seniors with 3-4 years of experience. Yeah, 2 is too small, but 3-4 years of experience, and they are seniors. And I've seen juniors who have 10 or 12 years of experience in this amount. Maybe they have experienced something different, but for things I'm looking in CV and the job I'm looking them for, they were juniors. So that's the difference.
1,000%. I was going to say exactly the same thing. I was going to say, for me, the answer is it's a vibe check. It's something where you can tell when you meet someone or when you talk to them, or again, it's why I'm very careful with language in a resume, because I can tell more about someone's experience level based on how they choose to present themselves. For example, a very small thing, look at the skills section. If I was hiring a developer, okay, let's change something else. If I was hiring a chef and they were giving me a resume to be a chef, and they wrote, I know how to wash my hands, I know how to, clean my surface around me, I know how to cut onions. It's like, I hope so. That's sort of a presumption of the general. That's not what we're doing, but that's sort of a presumptive understanding. Now, that's not to say it's bad to put in things like Git and design patterns. But if you're broadcasting that you can do design patterns, then that tells me design patterns to you is an achievement, not a part of your toolbox that you use to do things. Again, it's subtle language things, but to me, that's a vibe check of someone of like, I'm learning these things, integrating them, and I'm proud to demonstrate and list the things I know. Somebody who's confident or senior in whatever way, someone who makes things, does stuff, and those things are littered in I did these things, we use Git for source control, we happen to use these patterns for this stuff, whatever. But they're not skills. They're just things I happen to use to complete my tasks. And so for me, it's more that. It's more, the worst hire I ever worked with in my entire life was someone that I signed off on and regretted it, was the most senior person I ever hired. I was actually intimidated with their skills on their resume. They'd worked for all the big players. They'd worked for Microsoft, for Google, a whole bunch of people. Their resume blew mine out of the water, and they were atrocious. Not just terrible to work with as a person, but I gave them very simple tasks, and the way they approached it was just like, I specifically threw them a softball to see how they'd handle it, and then they came back to me like, they were doing Git commits of like 2 lines with comments and to-dos, and they weren't writing much code, and they were doing architecture on systems where I basically said, return me a chunk of JSON. And they went away and wrote an API for 3 weeks that didn't return a static function. It's just, again, it's little things, but it's, to Paul's point, it's not about years of experience, but that's the point. Isn't the years of experience. The point is, if you open with 4 years as an experienced developer, that tells me more than the actual year number itself. It's what you're promoting and what you're advertising. It's more about how you see yourself linguistically and how you approach it. And if you're saying to me, I know how to use time management, it's like, is that something that to you feels like a superior skill that's a proud thing? Or is it just like, should you know that, right? It's very, again, it's subtle, but those are the things that I look at mostly in resumes.
I love that story though. It reminds me of Enterprise BizBuzz. I've had the same situation multiple times though, where I've run into and worked with people in the past who had crazy credentials, tons of experience, and all kinds of stuff, and couldn't code to save their life. Greg, I think you gotta get going. No, never mind. I read that wrong. I thought you said you were feeling sick. Feeling attacked.
No, I was sending a message to Jason. Yeah, I'm feeling attacked.
I thought you said you were feeling sick. I was like, wait, I read that wrong.
And to be clear too, like I've done the whole journey myself. Like I look back at my own resume and I cringed. It's like basically because again, at the time I was really proud. I was learning design patterns. I was learning this stuff and going, I care about things like code commenting and clean code and all this stuff, and all these plebs around me don't. And so I'm going to broadcast it proudly on my resume. But then as I got older and did more stuff, I'm like, actually, the kind of people I want to hire are not the people who are going to performatively do that stuff because they want to show off they can use it. It's the people who just write code. If they know it, cool. It'll come up in the language of the way they communicate or the way they talk about stuff or the interview that we'll have. But if it's to them, if it's an intrinsic part of their personality and coding style, that worries me. It doesn't give me confidence. And so even my own resume, going back through it, I realized that the best responses I got, where it was just worked on this project, we used this tech stack, we did this and this, it did these things, tackled these problems. We had this number of stuff, we did this, it had this number after it, done. People like quantifiable, statistical, straightforward stuff. They want you to look confident and competent. That's it. Everything else is downstream. So as long as you can say, I know the tools, I know what you're using, I can use these things, here's projects I've worked on with them in the past, here's particular problems I solved. If you want more details, let's have a chat. Done. Yeah. That's kind of broadly the philosophy I aim for all of my resumes.
Well, I guess the trick is you need to get your resume past the automated gatekeepers that are scanning your resumes, looking for certain things. And if they're looking for certain keywords, how do you include them in your resume without coming across, like you said, as thirsty?
Well, I didn't say that, but it was implied. Yes. The truth is, this is tough because there's usually three parts of this. If you're hiring through a recruiter, then yeah, you have to play ball and fill in the section. But oftentimes that's rarely even on your resume. These days, a lot of those recruiter things force you to fill in a form online. So they actually want you to fill it in anyway in terms of the data. So it's not even really on your resume. Secondly, oftentimes you don't even need to do that, because what'll happen is because I've worked with these hiring firms, and what they'll do is, like, if I'm hiring somebody, I will say, we want these tech stacks. We want them to know this, this, and this, ideally this, this, and this. And they're basically going to ask you. It'll either be on the job thing, or they will ask you on the phone when you call them. If you see specific keywords, like, we want you to have Azure DevOps experience, and you do, pop that onto your resume. Go for it, because that's literally something they're telegraphing to you they want. But what I mean is, nobody in the world is going to read your resume and go, oh, phew, they've got Git. I was really afraid they didn't have, like, either you know it, which is cool, or you don't. And ideally, if we're hiring you to be competent, you'll figure it out when we work together. It's not going to be the deal breaker. You don't even need to have to have previously known Git, but the presumption is you're competent enough in what you're doing that I can probably teach you Git if you haven't used it, because it's just another source control solution, right? So yeah, so certain keywords you want to put on those, but more often than not, it's going to be in the form or on the phone call. Rarely, like, nobody's reading through your resume to find those keywords, because if they're doing that, you've already failed the thing, because they're going to read through the list of anybody who's already got them at the top of their page. So in general, that stuff tends to be more meta, tends to be more either specifically on the form fill in or on the phone call that you have.
Now, before we go on to the next part, what can you give a couple of examples of things that you like to see or do put in skills, like, just so people, if they're trying to figure out, like, what are some good things? Like, obviously, like, Git may not be a great option, or like source control, and I think design patterns. I think all of those are kind of a little bit too generic, like you said. But I can think of things that would be good, and I'm curious what comes to mind for you, though.
That's interesting. I guess I'm one of those people who I'll literally, like, I'll tailor my resume per thing that I apply to when I do. Mm-hmm. So I don't really I don't have a preset selection of stuff. I tend to just go back to the history of what I worked on and figure out. Well,
let's take like some previous thing, like recently that you may have done. Would you put like virtual reality or things like that in here, or?
So I worked on a VR project, and so when I would say that, I wouldn't say can work in VR. I would say have worked with ARKit, AR Core, Pico headsets, Oculus headsets, and whatever. I would target the specific. If that's what they're doing, I would say I've done these things. Or if they're demonstrating they've got backend stuff, I would say I've also worked with REST APIs or using port forwarding stuff for this. Like, whatever it is you think that they're doing tech-wise, you can imply that stuff.
Steam services or PlayFab or whatever it is that they're using, right? Yeah. If you use it.
Services, services and frameworks. Anything where you're like, okay, hey, if they're using Firebase is a little bit technical to get your head around. I would mention I've done stuff with AWS, with Azure, with Firebase, with PlayFab or whatever. If you think those are kind of, because that's implying more than just I know how to use the tool. That is, there's an entire framework and library that'll be faster if I'm working on it because I've already done that stuff. You don't have to wait for me to learn it.
I agree. Those are the kinds of things that or like if they're good with shaders or even just listing the engines that they're good with sometimes can be handy. Those types of things that you really want to look at and tailor those to the job, though, not have them be so generic. Let's go on to the experience part, though, because we're still on the first resume. I don't think we're going to get through very many today. So the first position was a middle game engineer. And it's current here. I would probably just remove the part that says it's remote. I don't think that that's necessary. Nobody cares about the location. They just care whether or not you're going to be able to live and work wherever they want you to live and work. So yeah, worked in a live service environment, actively improving and maintaining the live mobile game Peach Play, and implemented regular updates, new features, and performance optimizations. Hey, game performance optimization. That's up here, but there's so many things up in the skills that it's kind of tucked away. Utilize player feedback and analytics to guide game enhancements, ensuring continuous engagement. Implemented versatile system to load remote config events and analytics using Firebase. Firebase could be up there if it applies to the job. Designed and implemented the core gameplay loop for battle mode and AI-driven mode, allowing users to strategically place units, assign weapons, and initiate dynamic duels, enhancing user engagement and enjoyment. And then engineered the sandbox mode, providing users with a creative platform to interact with game assets, selecting, activating, flipping, freezing. Okay, so there's a sandbox mode, and then conducted rigorous testing and iteration of gameplay mechanics performance. So that's the first or the most recent job. I think that overall, some of the things on here are pretty good. It does feel a little bit flowery in some of the words, but I like that it gets into detail on a good number of the things that they actually worked on. It does not mention what engine it was built in, what platforms it's on, what they went out to, or anything like that, though, which I think is important stuff to put in there as well. You guys got more thoughts? Anybody?
Well, I always have thoughts. I always want to let other people go first.
I'll let everybody else go first.
No, I agree with you. A little flowery, but calling out specific things that he worked on, like using Firebase, specific features he implemented. I think that's good. The last one almost sounds like he was doing QA. So unless you're applying for a QA position, I'm not sure I'd include that on there.
Yes. I would probably leave that off unless you were automating it.
Yeah, that's. I have some problem with what's written here because there are some things that are specific and things that are not specific enough. Yeah, because if the one thing that Greg said, you have the rigorous testing and iteration, but there's no what he was doing there. Yeah, because he could be. There's a possibility that it was small studio and he was doing everything. Yeah, so he just has some experience in everything rather than some specific experience in one good field. Yeah. So for me, it lacks with the testing that he was responsible for automating the testing or wrote tests that automate everything, or just after the testing he was just optimizing and defining everything. And that's one thing. The same with Sandbox. Sandbox he did a sandbox mode, but going specific into selecting, activating, flipping, and freezing objects, that's just normal things. You didn't have to specify this one, and you didn't say maybe some technology, maybe something different with doing a sandbox mode. And with most of them, I have the same feeling.
Yeah, I feel like the second one here too is kind of not very useful. He utilized player feedback and analytics.
Yeah. So
the way game enhancements. It sounds like you just had to manage the whole project.
Yeah, that's the part too, right? Is like if something's flowery and it lacks details, people are going to assume that it's the least of all of the versions of it. It means, oh, you didn't really. So, like, if I was approaching something like this, I would say, for example, my title would be Peach Play in brackets Kids Games LLC, and then the date, whatever, and it would say a live service game with X thousand concurrent users. Blah blah. That's your framing. This is what it is. This is where I worked. This is the numbers of people I'm dealing with. What did I work on? I'd have a header or category that's like development. Worked on system A, system B, did this, use tools, this, whatever. Testing, set up or developed a test suite using X unit or N unit, doing this, running whatever, use a Git hooks to manage, blah, 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 does this, handle these different things. People like numbers, people like stats, people like tech they can hook onto. So give them, this is what it is, these are the numbers, here's what I worked on, here's what it did, and bullet pointed to just like factual stuff. Things like fostering creativity, it's like, well, where do I point at the part of the project where you fostered creativity? I can't see that. I can't do anything with that. That's not useful to me as a metric, you know?
Yeah, some of my favorite bullet points on, I looked back at my resume somewhere recently, and I don't like it, but some of the parts that I did like were where I called out the very specific things that I did, like taking a build time down from 8 hours to 30 minutes, and automating tasks that were taking developers months to take, a few minutes or an hour. And those things where it was very, very specific about what those were. And then also got stories to back them up. So then they come up in the interviews and they go, well, how did that happen? And I kind of explain like what the thing was before, how you solved the problem, fixed the problem, and went in there. Those are good things to have on your resume, because they I think they draw people's brain to it. They're like, oh, that's a 90% improvement. I wonder how they did a 90% improvement. And then that's what they're thinking about. Yeah, small studios do love generalists. So there's a lot of chat in the, or a lot of comments in the chat too, about.
Keep in mind, I am 1,000% a generalist. I'm not very good at most things, but I'm moderately okay at a lot of things. I make that my sales pitch. I just write the resume that says I do these things. Here's what I've done. And then honestly, I'm okay at resumes. I kick ass at interviews, because at interviews, I ask questions. I find out what they're really doing. I found out what skill sets they have. I ask the questions about what their team build-up is and where they're kind of struggling with stuff. And I'll point out when I have relevant other experience. It's like, oh, you're hiring me to train a person on this? Well, actually, I did work in backend before, and I noticed you've got a DevOps doing this. Are you using AWS or are you using Azure? Are you using AWS? Are you using NoSQL? Or are you using Lambdas for that? Okay, cool. Well, I've done this stuff in the past. So now they're like, cool, this person could possibly help out on that if we're stuck, right? You can apply generalist stuff. You just do it in a way that's, again, it provides value. You demonstrate, here's things I've done, and then basically say, what do you need? And then you think back to what you can apply. And even if you don't know something yet, you could be, oh, you're using that. I haven't learned it yet, but I was actually looking into it a few weeks back. That's the thing that has this, this, and this. I'm actually going to look into that a bit more over the weekend. They're like, oh, cool. So now that's another thing I'll possibly look. It's all subtle things, but like a lot of that comes to the interview more than the resume itself.
Oh yeah, I feel like interviewing is a separate skill that people need to do a little bit of research on and practice as well. It's not something that you can, if you haven't done it before, do well. At least most people can't do it well, and kind of understand. The goal is really to sell yourself as why you're going to be good and be valuable to the place and the team, and why you should be the one that they pick. Let's go on. There's this couple more positions here. Ooh, sweet. Just got a notification for something secret that popped up. Can't talk about it though. Damn. So, anyway, the next position was game engineer, Unstoppable Games, and that was about a year and almost 2 years. It looks like ending in 2022. But I like that it starts off right at the beginning with launched a mobile game with 100,000 plus organic downloads.
That's the strongest line so far. That's the thing where I would be falling asleep reading, and I'd be okay, cool. So this is actually someone who's worked on something relatively big. Now I've got something to ask you questions about in the interview. That's the first interesting line I've come across reading through that. And as you pointed out, Firebase, I'd be like, oh, cool. I'm going to grill them on how much they've used Firebase, in terms of
I agree. And then they go on to implemented levels, aligning with the designer's vision, offering 30 minutes of gameplay before looping. I feel less excited about that line. It sounds like they're kind of doing all-in-one development. I mean, it's not bad. Maybe it's just I would probably just cut out the offering 30 plus minutes of gameplay part. I don't feel like it adds anything. It just makes it feel smaller. You guys agree? Disagree? I see a lot of heads going up and down, so I'll take that as general agreement.
I would just be like, designed X number of levels with features covering or doing this and that. Like, again, it's tangibles. What can I point at? What knowledge are you demonstrating through the stuff you're doing? You know, I was like, what is all of these things? I go back to, can I point to it in a project, or can you describe what it is? But when it's the designer's vision, it's like, cool, point to the part of the project where it's aligned with the designer's vision. Like you can't, what am I going to do with that information? Because either you are aligning with it, which is the default, or you're not. And then, it's like, there's nothing there for me to hook onto, right? If you're saying designed a thing, like matched concept art to do this, or use level design based on research done into regions in country X, Y, or Z, it's like, oh, cool. So you actually studied the architecture of a region and matched the level. Like, there's something there. There's actually tangibles as opposed to sort of the broad strokes. And again, you can say that using a designer that created levels based on war-torn country XYZ, built levels that covered whatever, using features like tunnels coverages, using this, and overhangs that matched. If you want to talk about level design, talk about it like you've designed levels and you've thought about why you're using certain features. Give me something I can look at and go, oh, they're talking about it with a passion of, they know what they're talking about. They're using the language of Gestalt theory when they're talking about how they're just structuring their level layouts or something. Like, give me keywords or something that I can see is tangible,
Yeah, I feel like that line right there, the second one, could probably just be another comma point, like levels on this one down here, where they said that they served as a sole engineer doing all the aspects of game architecture, art, UI, animations. They could have just added and levels. It probably would have covered it. But that kind of covers the fact that they were doing sole development, probably with a designer that's putting in a little bit of data and guiding things, but not doing much of the actual in-engine development stuff. And then they utilized player analytics for rapid prototyping, improving engagement and retention in less than 2 weeks with the new version. I feel like this could be said better, but there is some value in there in being able to do analytics, get feedback, and do some rapid iteration, because it says they released 6 games. So there's some value there, but I don't know how I would word that.
But again, that's a cool line. Release 6 games. Why is it not,
right up at
Studio
the second
X,
one?
yeah, works 6 games, and then rather than saying across multiple genres, because that sounds like you're hand waving it because you either didn't do that much on it or you don't feel confident about it. I'd be like, worked on racing games, handling levels or maps or generation or whatever, worked on platformers, handling X, Y, and Z, did physics, just the basic, like, what did I do? Here's the stuff. Like, give me bullets of what I can look at,
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially it says multiple genres, and then it lists 4 of the 6, maybe multiples. Yeah. And then, okay, well, let's continue on. There's one last part here, and then we'll go on and see if we can get one more before we run out. This is going way longer than I expected. So the oldest position, it looks like it started out in 2019, game engineer on personal projects. Independently completed 3 projects, managing all aspects using Unity, achieved a day one retention rate of over 25% and 1,000 downloads for Ragdoll Rotate. Okay. I had a hard time reading that one. Developed games for both iOS and Android, expanding potential audience by over 20% for each game and showcasing proficiency, and then improved user engagement satisfaction with each iteration. I don't particularly love this part. I feel like this could be combined with the skills and shoved down at the end. Like skills and personal projects as a separate part, not put it in where it's kind of listed as professional experience, because it's, unless they're paying you, it's not professional experience, and most of that stuff's not. So I would separate that out, bring down skills, personal projects, and then combine it all in there somehow. All right, you guys have any more thoughts on this one, or you want to go on to the next one?
The only other thought I had on that is, if you're going to just prefix everything with game engineer, then it might as well not be there. It doesn't say anything.
If they all say the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, like the point of a title is a title. Like it is, if you had a unique or specific job, like if you worked in one company as QA and one person as, VP of engineering, sure. But if you're basically saying I did the thing that is the work on the game, you don't really need to have, and especially if you're going to use the same phrasing for working on personal projects as for client projects, it waters it down to meaning, person who game made. It doesn't really have any meaning at that stage.
Did you want to look at his portfolio that he linked?
Oh yeah, we could do that real quick. Okay, here we go. So we got this. This is it. Like a bunch of games. So let's click on the first one because that's what you're supposed to click on. Peach plays current game I'm working on. The 10th game I worked on. Okay. See, this is already better.
Yeah, because you have experience. Like this isn't, by the way, because that might have sounded harsh. What we're going through, we're only going through it like how it reads on the page. That's got nothing to do with anyone's actual skill. You can be really good and present poorly, or present really well and be terrible. That's not the same thing.
Oh yeah, if you read my resume, you'd have no idea that I knew how to use Unity because I haven't updated it since Unity came out, I think.
So what I mean is, like, overall, the stuff you've done, you've gotten a collection of skills using certain tools and frameworks, and certain things you found hard. Like I imagine, for example, Puppet Master for 2D was specifically, that's a particular tool that takes some learning with some API and some whatever. If I was somebody who had done that and used Puppet Master, I'd be like, oh yeah, I had to go through a little bit of a headache to learn that, or the analytic system or whatever. If there was one line that said build project X using, new Unity input system, analytic system, whatever, Puppet Master, this, and this, whatever.
Behavior trees right here.
Yeah, using behavior trees. That tells me infinitely more than an entire, like, I built a game that did some stuff that had some things in it that, like, just give me the tech. Because again, you're not selling someone else who's never used a game engine on what you're doing. You're trying to get hired by someone who's using the tools you're using, which means they either know what you've done, or they're like, oh cool, I don't know what that is. That might be useful to us. I'll either Google it or I'll talk to them when we come to interview. So I personally, I'm not afraid at all of writing technical terms that they may not have heard of, or like specific libraries or frameworks, because the point is, I have done this framework. If you use it, cool. If you've not used it, we can use it. That to me is much more useful.
Yeah, and I like the way he called out specific game mechanics he worked on, and then he's anticipating an interview question here, like what are some challenges you face and how did you solve them, and what would I do differently, I think is like anticipating other questions. I mean, I just think those are really good call outs for anticipating things you might be asked in an interview that recruiters are going to look for.
Yeah, I think I would put like a recent personal games there at the bottom, and maybe just list like the 2 or 3 most exciting or most recent ones with those things that you used in there. Like Story was mentioned, the Puppet Master and all those things. You like built this game with these things, and then a link over to it.
Like right there. I'd first off likely use Animancer. Animancer is a specific, unique workflow that some people may or may not have when working in Unity. If you just wrote in one project, Project X, bullet point, used Animancer for animation, next, that tells me way more than an entire paragraph of discussion around the project. So each one of these things to me is an indication of that you had a problem, you chose a specific solution that's non-standard, you implemented the non-standard solution, and it's now something I can talk to you about and ask why you made those decisions. And again, infinitely more value and information there than the other kind of list of descriptions.
Yeah. Yeah, the portfolio is way better than the resume. It's all the writing and stuff. It's yeah. I'm glad you called that out, Greg. All right, let's do one more real quick. There was another one that I'm gonna pop this one up because I think it actually looked pretty nice. It was pretty well formatted, but I don't remember what the details were. We'll just jump into it. So this was whoops, try not to put Michael's info up there. Michael's stuff, and he's got skills listed: C#, Python, and then Unity, Game Maker, and Unreal 4. So that's kind of the intro. I don't know if I particularly like that one either because it's kind of generic. Oh, we're losing Greg. All right, Greg, it's good having you. Everybody
Thanks,
go
guys.
subscribe to Greg's channel. It's linked down below. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
All right, let's continue on. So the first position, though, is from January 2023 to present, assisted at Mindgate Studios as a Unity developer. And the remote part, I'm curious because I mentioned this before, but how do you guys feel about the location of jobs in there anymore? Do you think that it's relevant or valuable?
I don't like putting it in, but it's one of those. I know why people do it. I think a lot of the times people do it to kind of imply that that's what they prefer to do, quite frankly, more than anything. But I think personally, I just leave that to discussions. I wouldn't bother putting it in. Again, it's information that's valuable to me as a person reading the resume. I don't care if you were previously remote working on stuff if you did the job,
Yeah, all I care about is whether or not you're going to take the job wherever it is that we're hiring for. But
I'm also debating if it should be or not, because I'm working remotely mostly. Working remotely is totally different than working on site. If you're looking for someone who will come and work on site, then that information is just not important. You want them to come. But if you're looking for someone who want to work remotely and he didn't work remotely yet, that's a big info that you have to take account into. Because working remotely from home, or if you don't have any office that you can go close by to just work there and go back home, is totally different set of skills that you have to have when doing it first time. And
well, I agree, but here's my counterpoint to that, Paul. While that's true, that's information that is beneficial to the person reading the resume, but it can only the only way you can do that is just if you put that information on, the only thing that can happen is you could screw up in terms of whether or not that information that you're giving. In other words, there's no value to you as a resume writer to play the game over whether you did or didn't work remotely. I would leave that to be not on my resume. And if the conversation comes up, we can have that conversation in the meeting. To me, there's no value in me creating a resume talking about whether or not it's remote. There's no value in me producing.
No, I said earlier, I would only add it if the job description said they want someone who will work remotely. Then I would showcase that I work remotely. I always say that you have to write the resume for job description. So if somebody says, we are looking for someone who will work remotely, then add it to the CV. If no, especially not, because they may just look at it. He worked remotely last 2 times. He may not want to come to us. Yeah.
That's very. I'm sold. I'm totally converted on that. That totally makes sense. All right, let's go through the rest of this. So, is remote as a Unity developer, assisted Mindgate's team with the development and handoff of their digitization of the board game Tapestry. Probably should be capitalized, my guess. And then instituted the base game for Mindgate's upcoming title, Undefended. I fashioned a custom construction system and tile map, game event implementation, and code to allow for map construction by coordinating with Unity's new input system. So I like the up to here, but the second sentence of the second bullet point is not perfect for me. What do you guys think?
To be honest, I like this resume overall. Just to go back to the top briefly, like I said, as a quick scan, I like the fact that it's languages. Cool. Python and C#, they're quite different in terms of how you both think about it and approach it. That's good. It means they're not locked into one thing. That's a lot of good information there. Next, platforms, Unity, GameMaker, Unreal. Cool. That means they're not specific to one. I'm going to guess they're probably going to preference one, probably Unity, but because they put it first, but I can tell that they've got at least a glancing experience with the others. The next is, worked with team. The word assisted worries me because that makes me think, okay, well, did they actually work with this stuff, or was that basically I was a contractor that came in for a week, or did I work on something? There's a lot of weaseling words that happen in resumes. I always try to be careful and note them down to ask in the resume what they meant by that when they said it. The sentences are a bit clunky because what you want to do is have the language clear. Like when you say all of that stuff, I would put the game Tapestry. If Tapestry is the game name, I would say game Tapestry did this, right? Rather than having it at the end where it's confusing, where you're kind of burying the lead. So I would say, game Tapestry for Mindgate worked with I would simplify that sort of linguistic structure. And then same with the thing we talked before about floweriness. Things like I fashioned or coordinated with Unity's input. Like when you said you coordinated with Unity's input system, did you sit down and have a meeting with it, or did you use it in implementation? Right? Like there's a lot of these kinds of things. They're not helpful. I know why people do them, but they're not. I would just simplify it because everything else is very clean. And one last thing that someone pointed out, it's very busy in terms of font choices and stuff. Like broadly, it's using very extended fonts. Like you have very long. The font spacing and stuff.
Or it stretches out.
Yeah, I tightened that just a little bit because it's unnecessarily sort of. Again, it's cleaner than other stuff, and I can see why. Again, it's chosen, but people are broadly here for information. They're not. You want it to look nice, but you don't want it to be. It's not a presentation per se. It's information, right? So I would cut down a little bit on the presenting portion, but broadly, so far I'm sold. I'm like, yeah, information, good stuff, and. To me, it's a sniff test thing, right? I'm just writing down, ask about how much Unreal they've done, ask about did they work with the studio as a consultant or contractor? When they said they worked on the construction of the system, did they actually use your code, or was it a prototype? Because sometimes companies will do that. They'll hire subcontractors to make a quick demo before they put a whole team and money behind it. I have questions I'd be asking here, and so it's all good. Like it doesn't have to be perfect; it just has to be enough for me to go, yep, okay, question, yeah, perfect, good, next, and move on.
Yeah. I feel like it'd just be split a little bit more detail and less flowery words on that one. Let's go down. This is a 2-page one, so we'll get to the next part. Next one was the Coder School in Walnut Creek, and that was from August to present too. So it looks like they're working 2 jobs right now. But this is a coaching one, so I can see that would make sense. Mentored developers in Unity basics, architecture, and coding practices, and then drove completion of many otherwise difficult projects for less experienced developers. I think this one's overall kind of fine. Like this just seems like it's as long as it's pretty obvious to people that this is probably not the full-time thing, that this is my guess is that this is part-time, on the side that they're doing that, and then this is the primary thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, like I've got something very similar on my older resume. It was Coder Dojo, volunteer, 2 years, worked with multiple groups doing this, and this, taught system architecture, and I just made a list of bullet and next, right? So very similar kind of idea.
Yeah, I'd say if there's a large number, I would put the number of developers. If it's hundreds, I would put hundreds. Whatever it is. Just to kind of have some more numbers in there in general. Like positive numbers are always good in there. Paul, you got anything on that, or do you want to go on to the next job?
No, I think it's okay. I would add the numbers for developers and also for the completion of many projects. Yeah, because many for someone can be 5, for someone can be 20. Yeah, you're just helping with the finalizing the project.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, let's go on next. TentWorks, San Francisco Unity developer for about 2 years, collaborated on core game systems, including a command pattern capable of undoing and redoing player actions using stacks, a database leveraging runtime sets and generic C# classes, and game saving and loading. Crafted heuristic-based AI that navigated using Unity's nav mesh, pioneered city modification features, leveraging a flood fill algorithm, and Unity's native physics, leveraged Unity events to make decoupled core systems, oversaw and coordinated a team of developers in policy and source control.
That one, there's a couple of things there. That one's so close to being really good. The only couple of things that bother me is, again, there's a thing I look for in resumes, which is a fidelity sort of arc, where if people talk about a complex thing, then a simple thing, then a complex thing, it tells me like how they're weighing it and what they're thinking about and what they found hard. Just, it's funny, you can glean a lot from the language, and that's why one thing that surprises, like, for example, saying collaborated on core game systems, including command pattern. It's like, cool, command pattern. And if someone is reading this and knows what command pattern means, they know a command pattern is capable of undoing and redoing. So you say did command pattern, and then you go on to say what a command pattern does. But by doing that, that's like, why are you advertising that portion? That, you know what I mean? Like it's subtle, but I would be kind of going, created an undo redo system with commands. Next, like that, yes. The person reading that should know that. That's like, you don't need things like runtime sets with generic C# classes. Saying database with custom DTOs, or database with my own bindings. Next, like you don't need to go into the specific stuff, because to me that's like, are you trying to explain to me how you did it, or like teaching me? Like, again, I understand why people do this, but in general, you have to, like, who's it for? If this is a resume that's going to like pass that sort of early test thing, nobody's going to understand half of this anyway, so it doesn't matter. But if it's for a technical person, they're going to know it, and they're going to want to know what the keywords are. So I guess it comes down to which fidelity you're going for. And I often find people walk this middle line of being like technical words and then like dumbing it down to explain it. It's like, pick a lane. Either give the broad overview saying I worked on these systems that did this stuff for like the recruiter who's not going to know it. Like, I'll often, for example, delineate between Java and JavaScript, because a lot of recruiters still don't know the difference between that. Or later on, I would just be saying, use AI using utility AI and nav meshes. Next, like, you don't need to go into the details of whatever, because again, it's subtle. But like, I break it down. This is really close to good, because it's what I said earlier. It's like, did this thing, use these tools, built these systems, had this stuff. But you don't need to explain what they are. You just need to say, did this, use this, had this. And that to me is more than just tighter linguistically. It also means you're more confident in what you're saying, that you don't need to explain it. And it's not impressive that it does undo and redo. If it's impressive to you that it does undo and redo, that tells me more than you want it to, because it tells me that to you is a big deal, when in theory, that's kind of just a default feature of command step patterns, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely. I think you called it in the beginning, though, that they should, like, the way that they should say it is that they did undo and redo with command pattern, nice and simple, not get into the details.
Again, feature first. Feature is we needed undo and redo, so we did that. We needed a rebindable key input, so we did that. Brackets, new input system, done. Like that tells you what it is, how we did it. What it is, how we did it. You know.
Yeah. All right. Yep. Sounds like good advice. Pal, any more to add to that one?
No. This is one quite clear.
All right, let's go to the second page, the last job, and then the education section, which we haven't taken a look at or talked about yet. So the last one is Block Party, a Unity developer in San Francisco, developed Mahjong for world's first tabletop gaming platform. Implemented modular networking system that allowed for safe syncing between all devices, rapidly prototyped UI for handheld players, implemented complex game rules and logic that allowed for tile sorting in win conditions, and then spearheaded the creation of Avalon, the resistance for Playtable, working with designers to create clean game flow and animation protocol using animation events and game phase managing singleton. I'm lost. Constructed code names and implemented new art, shaders, and animation for the game. Okay, I know what Codenames is. That's the game, I assume, right? Implemented necessary primitives for networking, coordinated developers to increase frame rate by 200% while developing the new UI. Okay, worked with SDK developers to rapidly prototype new animations and implement new models. I don't know why that's the same line. And then implemented networking code that synced game state between phone and console. So this was a relatively short thing. This was a 6-month job, and it has the most info out of everything. Like, it's got by far the most bullet points.
Yeah, and for me, the first thing is world's first tabletop gaming platform. What?
Yeah, isn't that like that tabletop simulator that's been out since like 2010 or something?
Yeah, but there were tabletop gaming platforms quite earlier. Yeah, there were some in 90s. So
yeah, I was saying, like, the first one couldn't have been in 18. So I don't know. I assume it's this Playtable one that's called out down here.
Yeah,
but
I think also, but yeah, I don't. So first thing is just puzzling me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because modular network is not all self-syncing. That's also the same things that we said earlier. Yeah, the same that it should be changed because it's explaining just basic things.
Yeah, I was going to say I would cut most of this out, trim it down to the games that you developed and that it was multiplayer networking, and mention the instead of saying implemented modular networking system, talk about what specific tech you used. If you used a networking library, call that out. If it was just raw UDP and TCP with sockets and you did that, then call that out and make that more explicit on what you did there. And then with the prototyping UI, that, I mean, I don't know that that's actually that useful.
Yeah, but if I was going to put that there, I'd be like, I would say, created Photoshop mockups that did X, Y, and Z using resolutions for mobile and PC, or whatever. Like, give whatever technical thing you did that was like solving the problem of what it was. You know, like if you're going to use it, or Figma to produce blah blah blah, or created something, again, words of technical stuff that I can look at and go, that's a skill set I can leverage.
Yeah, and same with the last sentence in this part. Yeah, implemented complex game rules. Complex game rules for people can be different things. We are talking about Mahjong, yeah, the game that many of us know and many developers, I think, tried or did something with it. So is this something new, or is it just a normal implementation of Mahjong rules that you have to use if you're creating a game like that? Yeah, or if you do something different that it should be written, what different did you do to it? Because
I feel like it could probably just be in one sentence that they developed the game for the tabletop platforming, including the rules enforcement and win conditions, right? Because that's what they're trying to get across, that it's not free form. And people would understand, and people who know the game will know how complex it is, and people who don't will just assume it's super complex. Yeah. And
the other thing too, and this is like a little bit meta, but I know I keep distracting a little bit, but this is the kind of stuff that I really focus on personally. Again, going back to the junior versus senior style resumes. Junior resumes are like, it's like car salesmen selling you a project they previously worked on. Senior resumes are, I was on this team working on this project. The tech stack of that project was, we used this network solution, this tech stack, we did this, it was on this platform, we did this stuff. Then here's what I did specifically on that. It's subtle again, but the language of that is saying, this project used Photon and custom socket stuff for this, and use this. Not I did this, or we implemented an amazing, it's just, it happened to have these things. And then underneath that, using those, I built a rule engine to support the gameplay of multi-users doing blah, blah, blah. I built a UI system for creating blah, blah, blah that did, you want it to sound like you are describing a project that had features, that had tech, and you worked on that tech. You don't want to describe like you're advertising why it was an amazing thing you did with all the stuff you did. You want that to come across through your confidence of not having to send the details of what that was, because you wanted to say, to me, working in Firebase and doing this and writing my own network stack, that's not impressive. That's just what needs to be done to get this done. If you can sell that tone of like, we worked on this, we wrote custom, we wrote compressed packet models for transmitting on the network because it was faster than the existing network solution we were using. Next, like, ooh, what does that mean? That sounds like they weren't happy with some out-of-the-box solution they used. They must have wrote something else. Note to self, I'll ask them about that in the interview, right? You want it to be like, this is what we did, and here's why we did it. Very kind of matter-of-factly. And a lot of resumes, again, junior ones specifically, will talk like they're trying to sell you on the project. And that, to me, is more of a like, again, it's the language of how they approach it. It highlights to what they feel is impressive, not the difference of like what the tech is. You don't want to make the judgment call for the person reading what's impressive. You just want to say, here's the tech stack. If you've heard of these words, you're going to find them, you're either going to know it and you're going to be like, cool, I know what that means. If you haven't heard of it, you're going to be like, ooh, I don't know what that is. That sounds kind of cool. I will ask them about it later on, right? So you don't need to kind of go into too much broad detail about like describing command patterns and that kind of stuff.
I agree. I want to hit the education part here, and then really quickly take a real brief look at one of the other ones before we go. And then I've got a couple emails. So there's some exciting stuff coming up. So yeah, the education part. They've got a bachelor's in computer science. Seems fine. Like overall, I think this is fine. Nice little.
I've done the same. As my resume has gotten longer, I've dropped all the education stuff and basically just say, here's the degree I have, onto the work, because that's what people care about, right? So yeah,
and I feel like this is almost that. It's almost cut down. It's so good. When I see ones that go into like the high school education stuff and all that, I'm like, oh, you're definitely young.
Yeah, for me, only the highest degree. Or if you have some amazing education or amazing course that you did with some best of the best, then okay. So you did MBA with the best people in the best university. That's okay, but it has to be additional. Maybe for junior and regulars, adding some kind of certification if you have it done additionally, because this can be also additional thing. It's nothing that will change much, but it will showcase that you try to learn additional stuff.
Yeah, just a little extra effort.
And one other thing, because it's weird, despite being so clinical up at this point about wanting raw facts, I always include some form of hobbies and interests at the end. Like you need something, because if like that's not just fluff. What that does is it tells you what kind of person are you, what do you like, what are your hobbies and interests, and what that does is it gives the interviewer something to talk to you about. It gives you kind of a downtime, and it also branches out into what other things the person likes, and you can glean a lot of information from how they spend their time and what they enjoy doing. So if you have interesting hobbies, it makes you a more interesting person. Legitimately, that's just as straightforward as that. So don't avoid having something there. Have like, even things like it doesn't have to be programming related, but did game jams for whatever, or worked on this, or I like surfing on the weekends or whatever it is you do. Just give them something to like communicate with you and like be a person. If you leave that out, then it becomes very hard to have an organic conversation. What
if your hobby is just playing their game?
Well, then I probably wouldn't hire them. That's personally just because that sounds a bit too suspicious of that stuff.
It has happened before, but it's not the most common. All right, let's take a look. There was this one other one that David sent in, and I largely just wanted to call it out because the formatting I think is going to kill. It's going to be. Was it this one? Yeah, it was this one. The formatting for it was a lot over the top. But I'm curious what you guys think. There's so many links in it. It's just link. I feel like it's trying to send me away before I read anything. And the fact that they're all underlined and everything, it makes it very, very difficult for me to like focus my eyes anywhere and actually read through it. I don't know about you guys. Maybe I'm just easily distracted.
I'm a fan of links on resumes, but not like this. The way I do it is I would have project name and in small square brackets the word link beside the title. So it would say project link, project link, project link, and then everything else is just plain text. So it's easy to see, easy to click the link if you need to, not in the way, and doesn't cause a lot of noise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think something like that would be much better because I feel like there's a lot of actually good stuff. If you read through it and you dig in, I actually got a lot of interesting experience. And I also would like the key thing I would call out, and maybe I think it would be fun to go over this one maybe again next week too, with more people dive into it, especially with I can get Salim to hop in, talk about design stuff. But his current position is working basically as a designer, but it's kind of listed as quest designer. I would just put it as game designer and then highlight the parts that you're doing a lot of quest design work, because it's not just quest design. If you read through, it's actually doing visual scripting, setting up the events and things inside of Unreal with blueprints. And it's not, if you put just quest designer, people are going to start to think that all you're doing is the writing part and that you're not necessarily doing the other actual in-game implementation of the design work stuff. So I would probably restructure that and definitely change up the formatting. Like this right here, November 2019, like the formatting is just not
that's the hardest part.
To the eye.
Yeah, like the alignment and the hard to read stuff is like, again, it's you want information and dense information. Is the most important part of the first word of your work experience the word November? I don't think so, right? Is that really you want to be thinking of it in terms of what are they here to read? It's like
game designer, right? Or senior game designer or whatever it is.
Company name, duration. here's description, designer company, just give them the information in nice, clean sort of. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, like I said, I think we could go on this one
Again,
a bit more,
and
but
no skill section too. That's the thing. Just again, or not skills. Sorry, no like personal hobbies or interest stuff as well. Which again, I always feel like that's such a missed opportunity. Just having like, I play guitar, like just something. Give me anything to work with. Is like, are you a human being with hobbies and interests? Like, give me something to work with.
yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Is it farming cats? Is that your hobby? That's no. All right. Well, let's see. I'm gonna check chat real quick, and then I think we can start to wrap things up for the week. Ooh, I don't like this view. I'm gonna make us big and boxy. All right. So let's go through a couple things in chat. Text fonts, keep to 3 fonts. I think you were mentioning that earlier, right, Jason? Like having too many is kind of an issue. Like with the one that we were looking at before, just cutting down maybe 1 or 2 fonts. Call it cat ranching. You know, my son's been playing a lot of Slime Rancher lately. He's obsessed with it. And yeah, ever since you explained the story of what the cat does, and I always ask him, he just still doesn't realize there is a cat. So he's like, he's way too busy. Let's see. For education, if you don't have anything besides high school or a semester of college, better to just leave it off. Yeah, I would say so. You don't really need it unless it shows something that you've done that is really relevant. Like if you got a game development degree and you don't have game development experience, a good amount of it, then it's going to be helpful. If you got, like Paul says, a degree from some really prestigious place working on something, you know, pretty cool and advanced, then that's obviously going to be valuable. But most of the time, the education part isn't nearly as useful.
Like, you know, Unity has that certification and stuff. Obviously, I guess if it's relevant, we talked about those before. I don't think any of us really care about those too much. But I mean, if you have it, it's another thing.
It's funny because like none of us really do, but I've talked to people who do. You know, who are like, oh yeah, like we checked, like, did you do the certification? They're like, no, but I wrote it. Like, okay. But it's weird because I feel like when you're outside of the industry, it's or you're not like actually doing the code, you're doing anything else in the industry, you know, you're a producer or whatever else. It's just one of those extra things that you can kind of look at and say like, oh, okay. Kind of like I used to back in the day before I was heavy into IT stuff, look at those certifications. I'm like, oh, they got that certification. They must know a lot of stuff. Now I realize like they studied and paid for the test. Like, you know, but let's see. Is there anything else in here? I don't know. Did you see any other questions or anything?
The Bulls question there is probably worth bringing up as well.
Yeah.
The Bulls one about being passionate?
No, the last one. What do you suggest for people with no degree?
Oh, there we go. Bam. I missed it. So yeah, what do you suggest with people with no degree or professional experience? How do you sell yourself? That is a tough one. So breaking into the industry, don't have a relevant degree and maybe have unrelated experience, but been making games on your own. You guys got resume suggestions specifically for that?
It's always hard to get to game dev industry, but I would give then approach more project approach. Yeah, if you should do your own projects, so I would write about my own projects and what interesting tech or the stuff I did with it. Second thing, I would strongly advise going to Game Jam or anything else where I can work with small team or even on doing studies on college work, find yourself some colleagues, do a project and write what you did on the project. Yeah. And then the same things, rather than having experience, you write projects that you did.
Yeah. So like kind of putting stuff up like a portfolio too, like building those projects, putting them up, sharing them. I think that's good. I think also it's just good to start making a bunch of direct connections. If you have no experience in the industry, going to those meetups and just talking to people and trying to get in on any junior level job that they have open at first is a very good option, because you can get in there, and once you get that first job, it's drastically easier to get get the second one. Like I feel like the first one's probably the hardest to get, just getting actually into the industry, especially if you're coming in with no other like no other thing outside, or to get into the industry. Like you're not coming in from the art side or from the QA side or CS or somewhere else where you would already be in the company or doing something exactly related. Would you rather see one large scale project or several small ones? I would say definitely several small ones. Wouldn't you guys agree? Because the one large one could be good, it could be bad. You know, several small ones, at least one of them is going to probably light up their eyes and excite them. And you don't want to give them something that's large anyway, because then it requires too much of a commitment for them to get in and actually look at it. And most of them will just bail out before they get to the interesting parts.
Yeah, the large one would have to be finished and on Steam or anything else with positive reviews to be looked at. Yeah, if it's a large one.
Yeah, there's an interesting contradiction that is. So one of the questions was, what was I looking for specifically? Truth is, I want to see you've worked on lots of stuff that touched on a lot of different technologies, but I only want to see the 2 or 3 best ones. So basically, I want the resume to imply or even mention you've worked on 10 or 12 different projects, but I only care to see the top 2 best ones that you feel like you've got the most represent your skill set. That to me is the most informative part. So when we're talking about this stuff, it's like, I want to see you having done a lot of stuff, because if you've only worked on one thing, then like you're only solving one set of problems. But if you've built a lot of different things, you've worked on lots of problems, but then what a lot of people do is they'll put everything they ever worked on in one list, and the quality will degrade. They'll have the really good thing they put a lot of effort in, and then lots of crap. And you'll actually notice it get worse, and they'll be like, oh, so now they've demonstrated to me they're a mixed bag. It'll either be good or it'll be crap. I don't want to see your crap stuff. I want to see the good stuff. Now, you can have crap stuff. That's fine. I would rather you have worked on a bunch of things that didn't go anywhere or look terrible, but you can talk about them in a resume as like, worked on these projects, did this tech, tried out this animation solution, did this thing, worked on these stuff, but then they're not very pretty or they're not very good, so don't show them. But just like list what the tech was, because then I'll talk to you about the tech. But the top, put the 2 things you're most proud of, or the things that you're like, that highlight the most. So so for me, it's basically, I'm looking for somebody who's working on something where they've done a lot of things to the point where it's not, the language of the resume tells me that they're not impressed by minutia anymore. As subtle as it, that's the thing. If you're talking about the language of coding, like it's exciting to you that you used JSON files to save your thing, it's like, well, that shouldn't be a promoted factor. It can be a list of things you did, but if it's like a sales pitch, that worries me, because it tells me where your thoughts are regarding what you're working on technically, right? So for me, it's a case of like, worked on this, use this tech stack with these tools and this development, did this stuff. And then personally, depending on like I usually do this interviews, but if I was padding my resume, if I didn't have enough stuff, I would put a 1-line description of the hardest challenge or whatever in the project. So I would say, worked on this, used these tools, had to implement this thing. It was tough because of blah, blah, blah. Like I normally would leave that out, but if you're looking for stuff, putting in a thing that says, I actively engage with this problem, and here's a unique edge case I had to solve with it, tells me that you're not just saying that you use it. So again, it's information. I'm looking for like, what can I glean from this? And so bullet points of tech and the level of engagement with that is more useful.
Yeah, I like the challenges that you overcame part, especially. That's really good.
Because I always do that in interviews. If I'm interviewing somebody, I will always say, what did you enjoy working on that project the most, and what did you hate the most? Those are the best 2 questions to ask, because even if you got an awkward person, everyone's got a ranted story about how this annoying thing wasted their time, but that tells me how they solved it. Did they get into the weeds and all the research, and then you can have a fun bonding session over how frustrating this unique esoteric thing is. And what's the bit they enjoyed? Well, it tells me what lengths will they go to if they enjoy something. If they really like a topic, how much research in their free time are they doing? How much of themselves are they putting into the project? So like, you don't need to go above and board all the time, but it tells me that broad range of, if you worked on something, what are you interested in? What are you going to put the most effort in? And how do you tackle complicated issues? So I'm kind of looking for those. Again, normally interviews more so than resumes. But again, if you're padding, feel free to like give me a head start on what to ask for. Because then if we're in an interview, I can go, oh, I noticed you said you worked on this. You use this networking platform. How did you find using Proton compared to Fishnet? It's like, oh, well, actually, I like this. They did this thing. It's like, oh, cool. They know what they're doing. They tried it. They used it. I can have a conversation with them about it.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. That's really good advice, and hopefully everybody here is kind of learning something. I do want to. I wasn't going to take any more questions, but then Galileo just asked this question, and I got to pop it up. And there was one other about here. Let's just answer this one. How can you get your resume reviewed? Just email it to me, Jason@game.courses. I'll add it into our list, and we will probably get to it in the next couple weeks. Whenever we're going to keep doing these as we get time, so we'll hopefully get to it. Just anonymize it, please. Don't put your name and phone number, or don't put somebody else's or whatever.
And I will say, like,
your
again,
best friends.
One of the unsatisfying answers with this stuff too, because people were talking about how they got jobs and stuff. The truth is, I don't look at resumes, and I also don't send them out. I'm usually in communities. I see people working on stuff. I see people tweet things. I see people do projects. And if I like someone's work and they're doing something I need, I will directly reach out to them and say, hey, are you free for work? If not, I'll go to somebody else. And if I get stuck after 2 or 3 people, I can't find what I want, then I might go to a place like a Discord group where I know people, and I'll be like, hey, I'm looking for someone to do this. Can you recommend somebody? And so the path that gets me to resume is quite low down the chain. So I wouldn't even put that much stock in it. People talked before about things like portfolios and stuff. I think that's honestly more where it's at. You're more likely in most cases to get work from somebody seeing your stuff or being recommended by a friend. Now, that's not to say you don't do a resume, but it's just like in priority order. You're better off, I would imagine, having a good public presence of someone who works on stuff with projects available that are easily Googleable or findable or itchable, and then moving down the chain into like being in communities where you're a known quantity, then moving down into resumes. If you're going for AAA, that's a different story. Maybe you want to have to specifically have hard-coded resumes for technical stuff or whatever. But again, on balance, it's more about confidence and competence. Those two things are much more demonstrated through public perception and how they can talk about stuff with confidence. And resumes are hard to tell because, as Paul was saying, you can basically write whatever, right? Like sometimes you can get people who can write a very good resume, but they actually don't really know what they're talking about. They mentioning all the tech the project used, but they were actually the person on the side working on some other side bit that wasn't actually relevant. And so it's not as good of a mile marker.
And then let's hit Galileo's question real quick. Does age matter? Can you be too old? And it looks like there's some discussion about it in chat too. Some people say no. Some people say yes. Have you guys ever run into or seen this issue where somebody was either not too young? Is that a no?
I was thinking about all the situation. I think no. Yeah, it more depends of the willingness to learn and to, because when I'm looking at people, I also look at one thing: is this person able to get better? Yeah, or learn new things if he needs to. Yeah, it doesn't come with age. There can be young people that don't want to learn, and can be old people that don't want to learn. So in age, on how old are you? Your age? No, for me, it never was an issue.
Yeah, I feel like being too young is probably a little bit more of a disadvantage because people will just assume a lack of experience, even if you are like you'd mentioned, the kid fresh out of high school that's amazing. It's hard to know that when you just see him like fresh, like could like may have never touched a computer before.
Yeah, I would say, like, if I'm being brutally honest, yes, age is a factor. It's not a limiting factor. It's not like a guaranteed gate, but legitimately your perception will change. And anyone who's being honest with themselves will say the same thing. If someone older comes in, you'll be like, cool, this either goes one of two ways. Either someone's pivoting career because they didn't like what they used to do and want to get into this kind of work, or they're old guard who've been doing this for a long time. If they're young, you're usually expecting someone who's got a lot of ideas, wants to shake everything up, is learned only the newer sexy toys, and doesn't have a lot of grounded experience, and will often try to create elaborate things and remake stuff from scratch, and often has a very sort of bullish approach to the way you develop stuff. Which, if you're hiring for graduates, cool. I actually like to see people who are kind of almost annoyingly kind of driven, because it means you can kind of direct their path in the way you want it to go. But if the other side of it is, the truth is, a lot of people, when you're hiring juniors, you know that they're going to seem very confident and often be a lot of full of crap, but not because everyone is when you're that age, right? And so the truth is, you end up getting to that point where you're like, for graduates, you don't care, but the problem can be is if you seem like you're too confident in what you're doing, not confident in the work, but confident in that you know the right answers. That's the thing. A lot of people talk about age. It's not actually age. It's to do with ego. Like, does this person feel like I've learned design patterns, so now I know the right way to do things? If you enter a company and say, oh, they're not doing it this way, they must have made mistakes.
They're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, that happens every time. When the truth is, anybody who's worked at a real company or worked for a while, their response is, oh, this is a mess. I feel sorry for them because I know how that happens. I know how a project over time gets messier. And their mindset will be, how could I slowly move things in a good direction? Somebody who comes in and goes, ugh, this isn't the way the tutorials teach me to do it. This isn't done correctly. That's naive, and that's the bit that people often balk at. It's not the actual knowledge. It's the fact that if you think that like learning a framework equates to experience, then if we can smell that vibe, that'll end up like, getting you pushed off the list. But if you come in with confidence and working on stuff, but you're approaching it from a, hey, how did you guys work on this stuff? What is the tech stack? How'd you get here? That's a different conversation. So it's not age, it's more personality. Age often comes with personality because over time people get, more somber, more serious, and more forgiving of mistakes of systems that get messier. And so people tend to prefer older people for that reason. It's not even about age from ageism's perspective, but it's age because older people understand corners need to be cut sometimes. When younger people feel like everything needs to be perfect, and that they end up wasting a lot of time either over engineering or designing their own stuff. So that's more what I say. It's more a personality of like, do I have the patience to correct someone who's going to be too energetic in the wrong things and kind of like temper them with experience? Or do I want someone I can just point a problem to and go, I have other stuff to do, I need you to just do it? That tends to be where the ageism comes in. It's like, do you feel like you're going to be putting the time in to move them in the right direction? And the truth is, that's normally the way it goes. Like, younger people require more hands-on work from you, and that can be a deal breaker for some people. If the project is like in a death spiral and you're trying to get stuff done, you don't have time to deal with teaching someone why, because again, questions too. Younger people will ask constant questions, while older people will be like, oh, they're busy, give me the names of the stacks, I'll go and learn it myself. That tends to be the broad, again, not always the case, but that's like broadly how it works. It's how much hands-on do you need to do?
Pal, you got anything else to add to that?
No, I think Jason summarized it the best way, yeah. And I totally agree that's the main thing that we should be thinking about and looking when we are checking the resumes and when you're going to a new job or new company.
Yeah, I said I also have the same experience. Like, junior people sometimes have a hard time. Senior people will only have a hard time if you look at their resume and it's all like at the same place doing the exact same thing and they're not flexible. But that's not usually the case for people that are applying for game dev jobs that are older. So
yeah.
Usually those people are fast. And I don't know about everybody, but I know like I'm 1,000 times faster than I was 20 years ago now. Like a project that would have taken me a month now, I can probably knock out in 4 hours. 20 years ago, like they'd knock out in a couple hours. It's not even.
We did that before. Like people mistake the 10x developer thing. They think it means they can type 10 times faster. It's like, no, they make decisions that lead to getting things done faster. They're willing to cut the right corners that like get things done, or they automate certain things away, or they go for solutions that get to the right answer quicker rather than having to deal with long, complicated architectures. An example of something I actually said in my Discord yesterday that kind of ties into this is the problem with younger developers joining teams and stuff is like, if a child walked up to you and said, hey, is war bad? Yes. Then why don't we all just agree to stop having wars? It's like, well, you're not wrong, but life isn't that simple. There's a lot more going on here. And what happens is the junior developer version of this is they join a company that's 30 years old with a whole pile of systems and code and go, this isn't very efficient. I agree. We should rewrite it so it's more efficient. I also agree, but it's not that simple. There's stakeholders and company and pricing and vendor lock-in and lots of issues. You can't just come in and go, we all agree with you. But if you think you can just walk in off the street as like a young developer and there's a team full of seniors here and they all have just like been blindly naive to the fact that you've got the right answer, that you came in from your recent degree, that you know how to fix everything, maybe there's more information there that you're missing, and that's the thing that gets.
So you think that they already thought of the idea of rewriting it, or
yeah. Because everyone wants to. If you join a company and you see their code base, your first thought is, ugh, this could be written so much better. And if your first instinct is to go, how do I manage to talk everyone into doing it? You're doing it wrong. If your instinct is instead to say, okay, let me learn how it got this way and how can I make it a bit better? Understand what the constraints are and slowly move in the right direction. If you're trying to correct things, then you're probably missing something. And so that's the age thing more than anything else. It's the forgivingness of like the empathy of understanding. When you've worked on projects that's dovetailed, you're like, okay, I know how hard things can get. I know when corners get cut. I know how stressful things get at 0 hour stuff. So I'm willing to assume things happened. And while I don't agree with some of the decisions, maybe I can find small pieces to fix, as opposed to like berate the state of the project and claim that it could all be done better, you know?
well, everybody's just stupid. They're all dumb and they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
All right, let's really quickly, Pal, you want to share real quick the Nature Manufacture Pack again one more time so everybody can see it? The modular castle and dungeon. Maybe full screen that. I'm trying to prep up this other stream that's going to come up in just a second.
Yeah, no, give me 1 sec. Yeah. So yeah, this is modular dungeon and castle that we released 1.5 weeks ago. It's still 50% off. You can buy it on Asset Store. It's one of the most popular packs right now. And what's the best thing is right now the lava asset that comes quite nicely with it. As in this pack you get some demo of the lava pack, but full lava pack is a secondary pack that you can get now 70% off at Asset Store.
Nice. So that's today, right? You said for the next 20 hours or so?
Right now it's 21 hours. It's 70% off, then it goes, I think, to 60, then to 50.
What does it put the price down to at 70% off? It's like $17 or something?
$20.
$20? Yeah, it's a damn good deal. All right, just got that saved. Okay, yeah, so go check that. I dropped the link in the chat. Let me pop it again. So I'm trying to pop up like a million things all at once. I'm gonna go find that code and I'm gonna click it one more time. Yeah, go check that one out. And then Story, your Ko-fi page. I don't know if you're still sending people over there, but I was going to link it if that's okay.
Why not? Yeah, it still links to the Discord. Why not?
All right, yeah. So you want to go support Jason's Story? Go get him a coffee on Ko-fi and join into the Discord server. There's the link, and if you there's Greg's Highland Panic. And then, oh yeah, if you want the flash deals, go check those out. All the flash deals, including Nature Manufacture stuff. Go grab that free asset. And then after, don't forget to grab the code too. These will probably be gone in the next day or two if they're not already. So grab it up, snag it. I'm going to send it out to everybody in email too. So they'll be gone quickly. If you wanted to use it, to grab the code now, copy it, go put it into your account. You don't have to generate the character now, but go get it in there at least before it's too late. And then after this stream, in just a little while, I'm going to do a live stream going through some MOBA development or just working on this project. I'm going to try to get it done before GDC. It's linked. It should like auto push everybody over to it, but it took the multiplayer mastery coursework stuff and converted it into a League of Legends style game with some different stuff. You can kind of see in the thumbnail. I made it so you can select multiple classes and then you get their abilities and their stats and it combines. You pop in, and I'm going to go through and just keep doing a little bit more work, maybe like another hour or two of development on that live, and just answer some questions in case anybody wants to see the code, see what that's like and all that. I've got this stream set to just shove everybody over to there, but I'm going to be starting like 15-20 minutes from now. Take a quick little break and get prepped. But yeah, thanks again everybody for coming out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, drop us comments below, let us know what you think. Go grab some awesome art from Powell up there. And join Story on Discord. Anybody got any final words before we go? No. All right. Well, it's good seeing everybody. We will see you again next week. as soon as I find the goodbye button, or I guess I'll see some people in just a few minutes. Whoever pops in to show up. All right. See y'all. Bye.